My name is Sickamore. I'm the founder of 3XL, and I'm here with some. My story started in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. Moved to New York when I was about 5, and spent first grade through 12th grade in New York. I was a mixtape DJ, kind of like Don Cannon. I transitioned into A&R work, and I've been doing A&R, managerial, and running labels since the last 20 plus years. Inspirations that got me into DJing, DJ Clue, DJ Who Kid, DJ K Slay, I guess Funkmaster Flex. A lot of the New York City mixtape scene was robust at that time. You know, that was a long time ago. It's about 20 years plus now since I was in the game like that. But it was a great time. You know, 50 Cent was popping at the time, you know, like in the club. And it was the time, you know, pre-online music where you had to be IRL to hear your shit. So it was a great time, and really prepped me for my career in music.
At the time, did you see yourself staying in the DJ space?
I never saw myself just as a DJ. I even called myself Sickamore, not DJ Sickamore, because I always had dreams of doing more things. I won't say bigger things, because there's nothing really bigger than a DJ. I think it's a really important part of the culture. But I just always had dreams to expand. And I got into A&R work. I got into managerial work. I run my own label now, and it's all great. You know, the music game is someone that you could wear many hats at the same time. You know, sometimes I pick up a phone call, I'm a manager. Sometimes I'm a label owner. Sometimes I'm a A&R. So it's really cool. I think when I was doing mixtapes, I used to have a tag called your favorite A&R's favorite A&R. So that was like part of the transition, and A&Rs were like, who's this guy saying he's a favorite A&R? And then I met my mentor, who is an A&R, Kiambo Hip Hop Joshua. And, you know, he put me on, started working with Just Blaze. And then from there, I started working with Atlantic Records. So I got my first job at Atlantic at 21 years old. So the branding worked. My first job at Atlantic was director of A&R. I was 21 years old. They found me doing mixtapes. I was working with an artist named Saigon, who was signed to Just Blaze's label. Some of you might remember him from like Entourage. Some other of you probably remember him from his underground hip hop days. And that was like the first major label album that I worked on. I was really proud of helping him get signed and, you know, getting to work with him as a major label A&R. You know, that time, my whole negotiation was I wanted a really cool title and I wanted an office, and that's all I cared about. And that was kind of pushed me into the corporate world. I think the best qualities I had as an A&R was that I was really in tune with what was going on. I was really great at trend spotting. I was actively on all different parts of the music scene, you know, from downtown Brooklyn, 14th Street, Union Square, 125th, 145th, Jamaica Queens, talking to labels, other DJs, finding new artists in the street. I was, you know, people talk about being in the street, but it was literally like grinding, hitting the pavement. So I think from there, people say, okay, I want somebody who knows what's going on, you know, and I had like a history of doing music, so that's kind of how it went. When I was at Atlantic, I was in New York. You know, I ended up moving to LA like in 2009, 2010, because, you know, the scene was popping out here. You know, it had like the Fairfax scene. A lot of stuff was going on. A lot of the music business in the 2010s slowly moved to California. But originally in my career, for the first 2 years, I was in New York. I had a tough time when I was at Atlantic. You know, it wasn't all, my story isn't all rosy and going up. You know, I had a tough time navigating that system. I signed an artist named Winter Gordon, who now goes by Diana Gordon. She ended up writing a great song, a bunch of songs for like Beyonce, and she helped write Bad Habit for Steve Lacy, you know. And it was great working with her, but I had trouble, you know. When you put a 21-year-old into a corporate job with no college experience, no intern experience, it's going to be tough for them to navigate that space. So I really fumbled a lot in that first gig, and it took me a while to really get on my feet. I think from there, I started managing like a young Nicki Minaj. This is kind of like the itty bitty piggy era, you know what I'm saying? When she was like rapping in the tub. And I learned a lot working with Nicki, you know, but she went on to greater things. And at the beginning of my year, my career was really tough. You know, I think it took me a while to kind of find my footing after that. But I ended up getting a gig at Def Jam. Shout out to Joey Manda, and I started working with Lil Durk, Lil Reese, and YG, and then everything started going from there. So I worked with Durk and put out the song "This Ain't What You Want." And then working with YG, I helped put together and A&R and co-executive produce My Crazy Life, and I had a lot of big records on that, like My Hitter and Who Do You Love, and started working with Jeremiah for Don't Tell Him, and that's when everything started going around. The most important lesson I learned working at my first job was you have to understand what you get into. I read a book called The First 90 Days, and it explains when you go on a corporate job, there's like 3 parts of a job. It's like the technical part of your job, like, you know, if I'm an interviewer, I'm behind the camera, I'm a key grip, that's it. But then if there's the political side of the job, like, all right, so, you know, who is that the son of the CEO? You know what I'm saying? This person's been at the company for 25 years. And there's a cultural side of the job, like, you know, we all come in and we're just wearing t-shirts, we're not wearing suits, everybody's bringing a dog to work. And at 21, you don't understand the nuance of that, you know? So I don't regret anything. I just think that sometimes the life experience is important. They're both great companies, you know. I still do business with Atlantic and up to this day. I think that Def Jam was, you know, it was like a lot of superstars in that label, man. Like the A&R team when I first got there was like DJ Khaled and Boo, you know, Akon's brother, and No ID and The Dream, and I was in the room like, oh shit, I'm like the runt in this room. I'm like the one on the 10-day, you know. So I remember the first time I had like an A&R meeting where I had like the best song. Everybody plays their record and I played the record and the whole room was like, ooh, that's that. And that was like a real moment. I was like, oh yeah, like I belong here too. And that was that really helped my confidence.
How old were you at that point?
I was like 30, 29.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So then you were at Atlantic.
I was 29.
Okay, so Atlantic at 21. So you were there for how, like 6, 7 years?
Hell no, I was there for like 2 years.
Oh,
and then, so I was on the street for like 4 or 5 years just trying to figure it out, doing managers, shows, just hustling in the streets of New York till I got the opportunity. But in my head, I was like, yo, second I get another opportunity to do this, you know what I'm saying, and I'm gonna make it work. You want to kind of know what it was like before I got to the labels. I could put y'all into like the thing. So picture like, you know, I was in high school in Brooklyn, and this is like post 9/11, and I went to like an alternative school. You guys see Precious? Remember when they were in school, it was like 5, 8 students in the school? So like in my high school, I did every first period to 8th period, 9th grade to 12th grade with the same kids. It's alternative school, called teachers by their first name. And these are kind of like students who needed like alternative learning styles. You know what I'm saying? I think now they call it like charter schools. And when I was in my senior year, I thought I was gonna work at Nike Town, you know, and that was like my dream. I was like, you know, I'm about to work at Nike Town, I'm about to get 30% off. This is where I'm going for it. And then 9/11 happened, you know what I'm saying? And they put a freeze on hiring. And I was so mad they put a freeze on hiring. And I was like, I never want somebody to dictate, you know, what I'm doing again. So I was like, I'm gonna just try this mixtape thing. So my friend Terrence, you know, I was living in Ebbets Field at the time, you know, and I was living on the 5th floor. Terrence was living on the 3rd floor. And he's like, yo, you should put out mixtapes like how you put out in school. So a lot of my career matches the timeline of tech. So around this time, it's also like Napster and Kazaa and file of peer-to-peer sharing, you know, the early stages, what would turn out to be like stuff like Spotify and things now. And I would get a lot of my exclusives through then, you know, and I'll start networking. So, you know, I started by creating a CD called Anthrax on Wax. It was big in the news, so I was like, Anthrax on Wax. I created, I think like 40 copies. And I went to Canal Street and I took the train. And I was like, yo, you know, I'm big in Brooklyn, DJ Sickamore, you gotta buy my copies. And they bought like 10, you know, and they gave me $20. Then I went to downtown Brooklyn, which is about one stop, you know, from Canal Street to DeKalb. And then I went to a store called Bargain Bazaar. It was still there today. My boy Dre. I'm like, yo, I'm popping in the Bronx. You gotta buy my CD. So he took 15 CDs on consignment. And, you know, the next day he called me up. He was like, your CD's sold out. You know, can you bring 100? And at the time, CDs would burn 1 every 20 minutes on my dad's computer. So it took me about 3 days to fulfill that order and I had to miss school. And then when I got there, he was like, yo, I needed these CDs, you know, 2 days ago. And but he bought them and he gave me think $250 plus the money for the first CDs. It was like 15 or 250 each. So it's like 37.50. You know what I mean? So I got 287.50, and then it was off to the races from there. You know, 20 turned to 40, 40 turned to 80, 100 turned to 200, 200 turned to 400, and I started making my ways and just hustling door to door. I spend my days either selling CDs or going to Barnes & Nobles and reading books. You know, a lot of times that was the golden age for business books. You know what I'm saying? A lot of Outliers and Brand Book Good to Great, Great by Choice, you know, 22 Immutable Laws of Branding, just all kind of different books that I would kind of read and just put into motion at that same exact time. You know, branding was a hot term of the 2000s, and I would just be all about branding. Hence, like your favorite A&R's favorite A&R. I try all these tools, and it was just like a cycle loop. And I was just like, oh, I felt like limitless. I could just keep doing this and trial and error and just kind of figure it out. And then I would find different opportunities until, you know, my name started getting bigger and bigger. I got like a DJ deal with DJ Action Pack where he would burn my CDs and he would sell them out of town through cash on delivery, through COD, and I would sell all the money in town. So each mixtape I'd probably be making about, let's say if we put out like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 mixtapes a month at $2 each. So, you know, $4,000 to $8,000 a month in New York in 2002, it's not bad for like a 17, 18-year-old. So I was like, you know, there's no business managers, no accountants, it's just all like in like a notebook, but I'll still have to go to school. Then I took that and I started like a school, like a store close to my school in Crown Heights where I would like sell mixtapes. Out of there, I got like an LLC. Because I was 17 when I got it. I started with my friend who called like Sickamore Sean's Entertainment. Shout out to Sean. He never really showed up, so it just became Sickamore Entertainment. And yeah, I was just hustling until I got different opportunities. I got like an opportunity to work at B Street Records downtown. You know what I'm saying? I know Cannon knows about B Street Records. Then I got another opportunity, and they wanted me to be an A&R. DJ Clark Kent was an A&R at that point, and he kind of co-signed me in there. And then I was like, they offered me a job, an A&R job, and they were like, hey, like, you know, I was like, how much does it pay? And they're like, you know, $600 a week. And I'm like, great, what's an A&R? And they taught me what that was. And then from the second opportunity was, through just randomly hustling in the streets of New York, I bumped into Just Blaze. I had like an opportunity to meet him. And I had a connection at Unique Sports, like Rockefeller videos when they had the patches with the teams on them shits. So I have boxes. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how, but I have boxes and shit. So I gave them all to Just Blaze to build a relationship. And then I used to just go up, bother him on Baseline. And at the time, going to Baseline was like going to heaven. You know, you just walk in there and see stuff going on. So you gotta think on your feet. At this time, I'm like 18, so it was like 2003. And like Black Album just dropped. Kanye's about to drop College Dropout. And he got this whole studio that he co-owns. And I'm like, yo, you should start a label. Like, you know, like Jay-Z retired, Kanye out of here. What you gonna do? Like, you know what I'm saying? Just make me the A&R. And, you know, so I'm just talking, trying to get in there. He says, like, if you find me an artist, I'll make you A&R, but you're not gonna get paid until we get overhead. I don't know what overhead is, man. So I'm like, I bet. So I knew Saigon at the time, and then I called him up, like, yo, can you come to the studio right now? Just Blaze likes your music. I was playing his music. I was playing a song, Come Again. I was playing some other song. And he came, and he liked them, and then they made a deal at Atlantic Records, and, you know, how they say, like, the rest is history. But not really, though, because I didn't really get paid because we didn't get overhead. It was technically an executive producer deal, you know what I mean? It wasn't an overhead deal. So I ended up working with another artist named True Life, and I helped him did a mixtape with him, which got a deal with Rock La Familia, which was under Def Jam through Rockefeller. And that time I got 2 people record deals in 6 months. So at 19, I'm on fire, like, or 20, I'm on fire, bang, bang, bang. And that's when my mentor, you know, brought me to Craig Kalman, and, you know, he gave me my first job. And I was 21. It was like March, I started March 2006. So I'm talking fast, but from the first mixtape was like September 2001 to like March 2006. So it was almost like a little 5 years of just running with my, you know, like a chicken with his head cut off. And at that time, I was like 21. I'm like, yep, I made it. I could retire from the mixtape game. It's my new life, you know, which was a mistake back then. I could have done everything. But, you know, the term multi-hyphenate didn't exist at that time. You know what I'm saying? People back then in the Stone Ages did one thing. You know what I'm saying? I love this new generation because you could be everything all at the same time, you know, but back then it didn't exist. There's a couple people who used to do it, but for the most part, you had to do whatever you did. That was like your craft. And I was really proud. You know, my parents were proud. I had an office. I had like a rent account. You know, I used to burn through. You know, it was lit. Yeah, I think branding is about like your ethos now. That's like the hot word of the 2020s, right? Like it's about what you stand for. You know, when somebody says, "Oh, that's off-brand," you know, somebody like, "Oh, you know, TmrO interviewed only fangirls. That's off-brand," you know, because that's not what you're about. You're about upliftment, empowering, showing how people get to the next generation, women of tomorrow. Like, you know, you guys are have a different brand. So understanding what you meant, what you stand for, what you're going to do, what you're not going to do, and kind of pushing that out and creating campaigns and different things that help elevate your personal brand, your business brand. And to me, it's like my name is Randall and my name is Sickamore. Now, like Sickamore is like this thing that I'll help try to build out. So how do I kind of maneuver like the Sickamore brand? It's like how I had it in my head, and you know, I think that branding got me out the hood. You know what I'm saying? I think it's different in the sense that back in the 2000s, branding was all about company brands, and now it's all about personal brands. It's like brands and sub-brands. I'll meet somebody with a brand, and they're wearing their brand, and their brand, then if shoes be their homie's brand, and there's other brands. So many different brands now, you know what I'm saying? So it's micro brands. You know, TikTok is built around micro brands. Like, you know, I might like hair braiding, you know what I'm saying? I might like vintage 90s sneakers. You know, I might like, you know, World War II artifacts. Whatever I like, I'm gonna find like a sub-community to kind of go there. And then the trick is how to brand out like sub-community, you know? So I think I went from branding big companies to personal brands, and now branding of communities. Yeah. I think it's kind of how it's changed. The artists I worked with had established brands when I was at Def Jam. You know what I'm saying? Like YG was YG. Like I don't know if any of y'all from the West Coast, but you know, he 2020 just read up 2012 YG was super elite. You know, I think at that point he was at a New York City based label, so I don't know if they could see exactly what he had going on because again, it's just still a little pre-internet, you know. So, you know, being able to help him tell his story of my crazy life, and you know, I think us talking, and he had a song on Just Read Up too called Bompton. That was my favorite song. And I told him, like, that's my favorite song. He's like, that's my favorite song too. So like, we just ended up catching a bond off that and try to make a project from that. And I think from there it was like called like I'm from Bompton, and we're trying to create records from that energy. So, you know, songs like Bick and Back Being Bold or BPT. And then it got kind of limited in that idea. So Jeezy, I think, and YG came up with the name My Crazy Life, crazy with a K, for obvious reasons. And from there, we started making even bigger records in there, and then was able to put out like a real cohesive, you know, West Coast classic. And I think that was kind of building like the brand of the album, you know. So a lot of what I do now is like help build the artist brand of like what they're trying to do. A link with Trav. I actually tried to sign Travis when I was at Def Jam. You know, he had a great song called Animal and another one called Lovesick. And I just really kind of did anything I could to try to sign him. But he ended up signing to Epic and LA Reid and Grand Hustle, and which was great. We stayed friends and we stayed cool, and I would just try to help where I could and, you know, just be like a big homie, a big brother, you know, to him. You know, and I would see him from studios, we'd hang out and do different things. And over the years, you know, everything that I mentioned before, Def Jam was happening. I started having success there. He started having success with his career, and he put out, you know, Al Faro, and then Days Before Rodeo. We bumped into each other in Miami and at the Revolt Music Conference, and he's like, I'm performing, you guys see me perform, like, da-da-da-da, you know, and we ended up talking that whole weekend, and, you know, after he had like a vision of where he wanted to work on his project, and he told me about his album Rodeo, and from there, I said, fuck it, and I switched to go to Epic to work with him.
What was it like curating that? Because you worked directly with him?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't use the word curator. I think for Rodeo, I was definitely the A&R. Okay. Travis is a master curator. You know, we helped him find a house to, you know, get all the producers in there, and it was an incredible house with One Girl and Alan Ritter and First and FKI and Metro Boomin and what was in that motherfucker? Southside and TM88, and a lot of those records that you hear, those aren't sent in records. Like most of those people, they showed up to that house to make all those albums, to make those records, and we went from studio house to studio house, and I would just kind of play referee, you know, and just, you know, help manage the process of creativity at that point, you know, to help see his vision out for Rodeo. You know, Travis is unstoppable. You know, I think he was always going to get to the point where he needed to get to. I just think I was able to help him in one aspect, help him get there a little quicker. At the crib specifically?
Or during the process of creation, like something that's unforgettable moment for you?
At the crib specifically, I know, like, you know, those crib studios ain't cheap. So one time L.A. Reid came down and he came to see what was going on. You know, and L.A. was a man in the industry at that time. You know, and he was like, oh, L.A.'s about to come listen to the music. And he came in the house and saw the rodeo shit that was going on in there and heard the music. And at that point, he just hands off. He was like, those boys got it. So let them cook, you know. As far as like just in that era, definitely the rodeo tour with Young Thug and Metro. That was insane. That was like kind of like the precursor to all the shows we see now with the stage dive-in and the mosh pits. But at the time, that wasn't a thing. Maybe a little bit in the future world, you know, but not on this level. This was like rage, and that's when I was like, oh yeah, this is going across the country, seeing that, and the fans flying. And I remember one time we were in New York, and I thought like, I think we were in Irving Plaza or Webster Hall, I forgot which one, and it just felt like not Webster Hall, maybe Irving Plaza, and I felt like the whole top floor was gonna come down. And anybody who was there that night always brings that up, like, you remember when the top floor was gonna come down? It felt crazy. that was probably some of the, you know, because no, he's been doing it on a bigger scale now. You know, he did the SoFi with I think like 77,000 or 88,000 the other day. So, you know, but I saw that on that level, which is kind of crazy. But I remember it when it was just like, you know, like 1,500 people or 1,000 people. It was crazy. Obviously being great at music, you know, artists who are incredible at music get really far, but understanding how to articulate your vision is really important. You know, whether you're putting it on paper, whether you're like drawing the shit, like whether you're explaining it, like getting the vision out your head and letting everybody else in on what you see, it's hard. Because, you know, people, they go to you because of the vision. You know, especially in this day and age, post-pandemic, people are following their dreams. They're quitting, you know, 6-figure jobs to do stuff that makes them happy. So you have to really show people where you see it going and how they fit a part of it, you know, when you're building out your team. I think him showing me his vision, I mean, getting it, and like, oh, I could participate and help with this, you know, was really important with, you know, getting high-level people to work with you. So if you could really focus on what your plan is and then getting people on board. I think that's a real key to artistry. Like anybody can make art. There's a lot of great artists. We all know great artists who don't leave their bedroom, you know, but can you get people on board and articulate it and put it out there? After Epic, I had an opportunity to go to Interscope Records, and my boy Joey Manda again, he brought me over there, and we signed Sheck West along with Travis and got a chance to do that. At the same time, you know, Cactus Jack was starting to blow up, so I started working with Cactus at the same time as Interscope, and just kind of having that juxtaposition of working at a record label versus like working at a creative startup. I got a chance to learn a lot. I think on the corporate side, you kind of learn how a chairman thinks, what it's like to run a company of hundreds of people and understand how to make like shareholders happy and what it's like to move big teams. I think on the startup side, you learn bootstrapping, how to do more with less. You learn, you know, brand building, what works, and pooling your resources into things that are really gonna, it's less wasteful. You don't have that, you know, every opportunity you gotta really make the most out of. So I think that's kind of like the difference between, you know, working at a bigger corporate job versus working at a startup. I think for artists, when you're picking a label, it's kind of like picking a college, you know, in the sense that you have to see what they're good at, and you also have to see who's actually gonna be working with you hands-on. I think a lot of times people sign to places because they have a name. You know, like if I'm a point guard and I go to Duke and they have 3 point guards that they just got in the last 2 years, I'm not gonna get any playing time, you know? Or if I pick a school that, you know, the coach really likes me and he really has a vision for me, maybe it's a smaller school, but I go there. So I think it's the same way when artists pick labels, they should go to places where you really like the people. And you're like, all right, this person you should ask the question, who's actually gonna be with me every day? Because they're gonna like parade 8 different people, 9 different people in. I do digital marketing, I do A&R, I do this. But like, who am I calling on a day-to-day basis? And then if those 2 to 3 people that you're actually talking to, if if you really rock with them and they rock with you and they understand your music and they understand your vision, you should rock with them, even if the deal is a little smaller, because that money is arbitrary. I think you got to go to people who have a vision. The state of A&R is different. I think now it's more research. I think that I live in a generation now where, like, I meet a lot of A&Rs who don't go to the studio. They question why they have to go to the studio. They don't talk to producers. They just, like, kind of leave the artist to themselves, and then like, email me the album when it's done. You know, so to them it's more like it's almost like a research job. You know, they're searching for penny stocks. You know, they're like, oh, I found this on YouTube and it's trending at 3%. Let me sign this up, and for this dollar amount, and I put it in this algorithm and this chart metric, and the deal's worth this much, so I'm going to offer this and da da da. You know, and what I realized with that is, you know, you're not selling products, you're selling people, you're selling music. So it hurts hip hop, because especially in hip hop, because we're such a DIY genre that sometimes these people who are good at numbers and good at crunching numbers, they don't give a fuck about the culture. They don't even like the music that they're finding. And that's why it's so disposable. And that's why you see a lot of people dying in hip hop culture, because if you go find some guy in Jacksonville and you're gonna give him $1 million because you feel like it's trending because he's doing beef records, and you never go to Jacksonville and you never actually tell him how to spend the money and never check the studio, then one day he gets murdered, you know what I'm saying? Just because, and then you're just quiet about it because you're just finding the next research thing. You know, it's really some dark shit that's going on in the state of A&R, personally. You know, I think that a lot of the great A&Rs used to be in business, and they kind of went into more production companies, like their Excel Studio, you know, and or Don Cannon, you know, a generation now. I think these people who are in Drama and Lick, I think these people who are really talented at artist development are in production companies now. But as far as the state of A&R, I think it's worse than ever. I think it's human nature. Not human nature, it's just the law of the universe, you know. People go by incentives. You see, if I'm a company and I go from having to sell records, I need to have, like in the 2000s, I need to have an artist be big and be really good to get out there. Now I'm casting a wider net, you know, now it's about market share, it's about the long tail. I need to sign a lot for something to be successful, and the one win outweighs the losses, but even the losses, if I have a song or an algorithm, I can make it work. You know what I mean? So I don't really have time to, as a major label, to sign 100 things. Because, I mean, I can sign 100 things and hopefully one of them work, you know? But it's not products, it's people. You know, every time you sign this person from Houston or Vancouver or Mobile, Alabama, or, you know, or Chicago, and you don't pay attention to them, you're ruining a lot of lives and a lot of careers, and the people that just get thrown out, you know, is dark, especially in hip hop. You know, sometimes it's more aggressive and needs more hands-on. So if they're incentivized by signing whatever's trending, not what's really good, and they don't want to put a lot of time into it, they want to turn it around, then I think that most of the success is coming out of production companies. You see the same thing in film. I think, like, you know, look at the Bronze and the A24s and the Neons. They're really coming with a lot of the fire films now. You know, I think when you have the bigger companies like a Paramount Pictures or Universal, they're good for, like, you know, Marvel or like, you know, remakes. But it's lower stakes, because if a movie doesn't go well, you know, nobody dies. You know, I think in hip hop it's higher stakes, and it's a problem that needs to be solved. I think it's dependent. You can't be an idiot. You can't not look at data. It's important to how you judge, like, the market, what the value is of a deal. But then you also have to, back to branding, understand what fits in your company brand, your company culture. You know, right now, 3XL Studio is focused on signing and developing artists in New York City who are living in New York City, and as part of that, like, new renaissance in New York. So I'm gonna look at that net, find people who are working, use the numbers to make me access a right deal, then really develop that and really be hands-on and limit the amount of artists that we sign, so we have the resources to really give everybody some real attention. I think when you have a bigger vehicle and more overhead and more things, the incentives change, and you need to feed the beast. You know, if you have 8-figure, 9-figure overhead, then you need to just churn shit out. So I think that's why I think a lot of these production companies, a great time to be in a production company, whether it be in film or music. I think sports does a good job of, you know, developing things. Like, what's this guy's name? The Toronto Raptors president, Majir Ajari or something like that. I'm butchering his name, but he helped develop something called Basketball Without Borders in Africa, and help develop the next generation of African talent. And then a lot of people come from that, like Pascal Siakam and all these guys, and it's great. He's invested into Africa, is investing back, and now the NBA is having all this new talent. That's an African talent. I think that's a great example of seeing like a trend or data or whatever and developing it, but actually creating more resources for it versus just like giving somebody $1 million and not building a studio in there or building like a hub or a record label that you're going to develop into that city. So it's tricky, man. I think sports kind of does it right. They use data in the right way. You'll tell a kid like, you're only shooting 17% from three, so maybe you should drive more or whatever. And I think we need to start using data for more song making. Maybe use the data to figure out what tempo his songs work, so do more of that. I think some of the great songwriters like the Max Martins and the Dr. Lukes of the world, they think about it that way and they build more hits that way. I think hip hop A&R needs to kind of develop a little bit, needs to be a little bit more music based. Right now the data is not based around music, it's all numbers. I think the creative control is great. I think them getting the bag is great. I think the easy entry point is great, that, more things that weren't going to be seen gets risen to the top. I worry when it gets to that next level, when it gets difficult and you don't have any professional experience around you. And you don't even know why you got that $1 million or how do you even create that song, and you can't create it again. Then you get depressed and you start drinking and you're in the studio left alone with no A&R, with no creative person, nobody setting up sessions, nobody telling you where to go. It can get dark fast, So the entry point's great, but then what happens when it's not working, and then, the lights go off and they start saying, well, we're pulling back your budgets and you don't have a professional manager and you don't have a professional A&R, you don't have professional producers around you and da-da-da. And then you're online, you post something, everybody's putting trash cans, trash. You know what that does to your mental health? Like, it goes two ways, So it's like having somebody around, like, oh, nah, it's okay. Okay, we're going to switch up, we're going to pivot this, don't put this out, da-da-da. Having a team works, So I think on the entry point level, it's great, but I think it's great for discovery. But when it's time to really get it going, shit gets murky. Well, to me, New York's not a monolith. You know what I'm saying? You could be Benny the Butcher, you could be DMX, you could be Mos Def, you could be Ice Spice, you could be TmrO, you could be A$AP Rocky, you could be motherfucking. All these different type of people come from New York. You know what I'm saying? There's not one sound from New York. I think because of the micro trends and the different ways that people go into their world, it's easier than ever for you to find the shit that you like. You know what I'm saying? I'm a basketball nut. Like, I listen to fucking Bill Simmons and podcasts and shit about it. I care way too much about like who's making the All-Star game and things like that. But I have worlds that I could just kind of dive into. I think maybe hip hop needs more sub-worlds and people curating different worlds so you kind of see it. As far as the state of New York, I think it's great. I think the new New York kids like in Ridgewood and LES and Bushwick are running around and creating things. And because of the pandemic, they found ways to be really crafty about locations and, studios and how to record and how to do pop-ups. And I think it's really cool. And I think there's a lot of great new artists that are coming out that I feel like we're going to look back to say this was a great time. That kind of, then they see what's going on in the major label. They see what I see. And they're like, I'm not doing that. I'm not signing. You're not going to ruin my career. Like, you guys ruin my favorite artists. And a lot of them are staying independent. They're constantly saying, no, I'm not taking a big check. I'm not taking a big bag. They're getting smart because real artists realize it's a trap. I think for UMG pulling out of TikTok, I think they're trying to fight for their artists to make more money. I think TikTok kind of needs to pay their share the same way Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and everybody else pays. Why not TikTok? I do think just kind of doing it abruptly without even like talking to the artists or getting their point of view and stuff is kind of fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Because you're only in that building. Like, you didn't send out do a town hall saying like, hey, we're gonna pull this off of TikTok. Do you guys have any opinions? Artists are some of the most creative motherfuckers in the whole world. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you would have asked them some ways to solve it, you would have probably been able to do it. But just, because you're working your hardest trying to get your song out there and somebody just pull your music is traumatic. I'm just watching on Twitter, everyone's like, TikTok, just pull my music. All my stuff's getting muted. And it's like, man, I think people forget that these are all private corporations, or public companies, but they're still companies. It's not free for all. It's not Wikipedia. You know what I'm saying? This is all for-profit business. So I think, an artist who rely on these platforms, needs to know, like, hey, this shit could go away. I don't care if it's the radio, MySpace, ringtones, Instagram, TikTok. There's always going to be more. So people who build a platform for themselves and are able to not totally depend, use it as a marketing tool, but don't build your whole brand and make your whole business on somebody else's platform unless they decide to take it away from you. Like the old joke they used to say, like, if Instagram went away tomorrow, are you still a model? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just, you gotta be able to withstand, but it's crazy. I can imagine just waking up and being like a TikTok star, making my stuff going viral, and then my publisher just move my shit off me. I'd break my house up, you know what I'm saying? Just try to be as independent as possible, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of like what I'm saying. It's just like, try to, because it's not just Universal artists, it's also the publishing companies, and that's all kind of different artists that are not even signed to Universal. So try to stay as independent as low as possible, and just know that when you go to these big corporations, you're part of like a group, It's a lot going on. So I feel bad, but at the same time, like, it's part of the business. And if you're not on UMG and you're not a Universal artist, it's up. I manage an artist right now. We dropped a song yesterday. We was like, oh, yeah, I had to triple check. Was anybody here on Universal? No, let's go. You know what I'm saying? We double down, quadruple the TikTok budget. We out. Like, you know what I'm saying? So my favorite part about my job is kind of like that beginning ideation process. Like when I sit down with artists and we try to figure out what the next project is, and then we kind of find that spark and we could go from there. It's fun. It's like being a kid, like playing make-believe, you know what I'm saying? It's like a class project with your friends, and then you could see it go and do this and maneuver this and change the font to this and add the song to this and try to make that. I love the creative process. I'm always a little sad when the project is out, because then it's like, what am I gonna do now? You know what I'm saying? My favorite thing in life is creative process and helping people, process their creativity. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's my favorite part, and I think that's something I believe in when I get older. I want to teach classes in college about creative process. I want to help. I think my purpose is to help people with creative process, and that's like, I feel like that's why I was put on earth. I was put on earth to, help make things better, help make, artists better, help people. I think everybody's on earth to help in some way, and I feel like I'm very lucky to find what my role is in helping. So, and from there, I'm compensated really well, and it's dope, but I've been doing this nonstop since I was telling you about the mixtapes, you know what I'm saying? Right now we're in a big multi-million-dollar studio where Michael Jackson used to record, but I remember, having my same notebook out, helping, artists in the projects in $15 hour studios, and nothing really changed.